Hi, it's Katrina! From one of the oldest known submersibles ever to tunnels used as hiding places, here are 9 abandoned and forgotten submarines and submarine bases. Number 9. Submarine Explorer. The Submarine Explorer is one of the oldest known submersibles in existence. Since 1869, it's laid abandoned in the intertidal zone of Isla San Telmo, the westernmost of Panama's Pearl Islands. It was built in Brooklyn, New York between 1863 and 1865 by German inventor Julius H. Kroll and an American named Ariel Patterson. The 36-foot-long Explorer was the first submersible that could go over 100 feet below the water's surface. This was back in the day when the vessel had to be lit by candlelight and could only house up to 6 crew members. After numerous unsuccessful attempts at being sold to the U.S. Navy, its purpose was to scour the ocean's bed for pearls in Panama Bay. The creators of the Explorer didn't understand the potentially fatal effects of decompression on the human body, commonly known as caisson disease, or the bends. Crew members began suffering from these ill effects after quickly resurfacing from lengthy dives. Between this and the overfishing of pearl beds in Panamanian waters, the Explorer was eventually abandoned. It was discovered in a severe state of decay in 2000 by archaeologist James P. Delgado, who was vacationing in the area and heard of a Japanese 2-man midget submarine that was only visible at low tide. The true identity of the submersible had long been forgotten by the locals, but Delgado set the record straight throughout subsequent investigations of the craft. Now you know. Number 8. HMNB Devonport, the Guzz. Just outside Plymouth, England, there's a deserted military submarine graveyard called HMNB Devonport and nicknamed the Guzz. The now rusting, decrepit fleet of 13 submarines there were once part of a deadly, top-of-the-line nuclear fleet that served in the British Royal Navy's Cold War defense system. Some of the vessels were decommissioned back in the 1990s. Doesn't seem that long ago, but hey, time is passing quickly, especially for a submarine. 4 out of the fleet have had their nuclear fuel rods removed, while 9 still contain nuclear material. All of the submarines have been defueled. The British Ministry of Defense has assured the general public that they are not at risk of exposure to harmful materials from the submarines, which are part of the Ministry of Defense's Submarine Dismantling Project, or SDP. The expensive multi-million-pound project began in late 2016. The HMS Dreadnought is the oldest submarine waiting to be dismantled, having sat at the graveyard for 38 years, longer than its service span. HMS Swiftsure, the first Royal Navy submarine to enter the program, is projected to be fully dismantled by the early 2020s. Number 7. The USS Ling. The USS Ling was a 312-foot-long, 2,500-ton high-speed submarine that was commissioned in 1945 for use against German U-boats in World War II. She never saw battle, however, and was decommissioned in 1946 after traveling from the Naval Submarine Base New London in Connecticut to the Panama Canal Zone. In 1960, the USS Ling was towed to the Brooklyn Navy Yard and converted into a training ship. The submarine currently rests at the bottom of the Hackensack River outside the former New Jersey Naval Museum, which unfortunately closed in 2015. It was damaged significantly in 2012 during Superstorm Sandy. During the storm, the walkway leading to the USS Ling from shore was swept away. The submarine was subsequently closed to the public. Today, the vessel is surrounded by overgrowth and garbage lining the muddy riverbank. It's tilting to one side due to the lack of enough water to stay afloat, exposing rust and gaping holes along the hull. All attempts by advocates to restore the USS Ling to her former glory have failed due to a lack of funding. 5 suspects are currently facing a slew of charges for allegedly burglarizing and flooding the submarine during the summer of 2018. They're accused of causing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage by stealing valuable artifacts and flooding the USS Ling with 10 feet of water. Number 6. The Hara Submarine Base. For roughly 4 decades, the once top-secret Hara submarine base in Estonia's Juminda Peninsula was a bustling Soviet Union military hub. The military built the base between 1956 and 1958, using stones from nearby villages, after forcefully relocating the remote site's indigenous inhabitants. It's positioned opposite of the Finnish Canal of Helsinki, approximately 46.6 miles across the Gulf of Finland. At the height of the Cold War, Hara Submarine Base was one of the few facilities throughout the USSR that carried out degaussing, or submarine demagnetization procedures. The base was used for major operations by the occupying Soviet Union until 1991, when the Soviets fled. In 1989, after decades of laboring under the Soviets, Estonians and their neighbors joined hands in a peaceful protest to dismantle the Marine base. This was one of several events throughout Soviet-occupied territory that symbolized the impending collapse of the Soviet Union. Today, the graffiti-covered decaying Hara submarine base is part of Lahima National Park and is mostly a destination for urban explorers. The buildings have been gutted, but the concrete foundations remain. About 10% of the base is connected to the mainland. A boat is needed to access the rest. Upon entering, visitors encounter a sign stating that their entry is at their own risk and that in the event of an accident, they accept responsibility. The base is owned and managed by an organization called Hara Saddam, which hopes to renovate the harbor the base is located in. And now for number 5. But first, would you like to go explore this abandoned base? Are you an urban explorer? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We post new videos every day. Number 5. Questor 1. Questor 1, or Questor the First, is a 45-foot submarine built in 1967 from salvaged metal by a Brooklyn shipyard worker named Jerry Bianco. He hoped to raise or at least salvage valuables from the wreck of the SS Andrea Doria, which sank in 1956 off Nantucket Sound. Bianco painted his masterpiece bright yellow after getting a good deal on the paint. Get it? Yellow submarine? In 1970, the vessel tipped sideways and became stuck in the mud as he attempted to lower it into Coney Island Creek using a crane. He was unable to raise the funds to salvage the vessel, but it was eventually righted and cruised through local waters according to rumor. During the 1970s, while the Questor 1 was docked in the creek, a storm reportedly ripped it from its moorings and into its current place, where it remains today. It's partially visible depending on the tide and is used as a fishing platform, and birds and blue crabs love it and have made it their home, so now you can visit them as well. Number 4. Yugoslavian submarine tunnels. Along the Adriatic Sea on the remote Croatian island of Vis, in a region that was once part of Yugoslavia, there is a series of eerie, dark submarine tunnels that were built during World War II. They were the first modern military tunnels drilled into the hillsides of Vis. After World War II, the island of Vis became the central naval base of the Yugoslavian military and remained so throughout a period of communism lasting nearly 50 years. During this time, the Yugoslavian military sometimes used the submarine tunnels as a hiding place. When Vis fell under Croatian control in the early 1990s, some of the structures were repurposed for civilian needs, but most were simply abandoned and remain so today. The abandonment of the island as a military base opened it up to the public for the first time in nearly 5 decades. Tourists are free to explore the old submarine tunnels at their own risk, and the calm, clear surrounding waters make them popular among swimmers. Number 3. The Isle of May Submarine Graveyard. On January 31, 1918, 270 people died in one of the worst British naval disasters of World War I. During this so-called Battle of the Isle of May, 20 miles off Scotland's east coast, 2 K-class submarines were destroyed and 3 were damaged. The deaths were caused by collisions within the British fleet. 0 fatalities were at the hands of enemy forces. 1 officer was court-martialed, but the details of the embarrassing event didn't begin to emerge until 60 years later, after the last survivor passed away. The large and weighty K-class submarines were stifling, difficult to maneuver, and too slow to keep up with surface vessels. 6 out of the 18 that were built were lost in accidental collisions, while none were lost in action. The facts surrounding the Isle of May disaster have emerged slowly in recent years. In 2002, a commemorative plaque was erected in the coastal village of Anstruther, but it contains no mention of death. The Submariners Association holds an annual commemorative service at the site of the 2 sunken vessels, which lie 164 feet below the surface and 328 feet apart from one another, and the wreck has finally been surveyed by divers. Number 2. The INS Kursura. The INS Kursura was a Kalvari-class diesel-electric submarine of the Indian Navy. It was the 5th submarine to be commissioned by the Indian Navy and was active from 1969 to 2001. During her lengthy service, the Kursura participated in the Indo-Pakistani War, patrolled the ocean, and helped enforce the borders of India's allied countries. The Navy and Ministry of Defense gifted the submarine to Andhra Pradesh when it was decommissioned in September of 2001. On August 24, 2002, the INS Kursura was opened to the public as a museum at Ramakrishna Beach on the east coast of the Bay of Bengal. Although it now sits on land, it's known as one of the few submarine vessels in the world that maintains its originality. Number 1. Kraternyy Submarine Base. Located off the Japanese coast and part of the Kuril Island archipelago of Russia's Far East, Simushir Island was once home to the Soviet Union's Kraternyy Naval Base. The Soviets built an entire town around the base. At its peak, the settlement was home to around 3,000 residents, mostly naval personnel and their families. It boasted apartment buildings, shops, a school, a hospital, and livestock pens. For all intents and purposes, it was a functioning village. From 1978 until 1991, a secret submarine base operated within the naval base. A flooded caldera made the volcanic island a perfect place for storing submarines. Little else is known about what went on within the submarine base. Kraternyy is now a ghost town where Soviet-era artwork still adorns the walls of many buildings. Books are scattered across floors, half-finished shoes await repairs, and trucks sit eerily still, rusting out. Nature is hard at work reclaiming the shell of a town as its own via overgrowth and animals repurposing the buildings as their new homes. The settlement was essentially left as is, allowing modern visitors a first-hand glimpse at Cold War-era life in the Soviet Union. Thanks for watching! Weren't these cool? Let me know which summer base you wish you could see in the comments, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!